let's get started with the book. And Jean, since you have to leave, I'll throw it to you first if you had any questions that you had for Bob or comments that you wanted to share, since give you a chance since you'll have to cut out early.
Oh, thanks. Actually, Bob and I had a lot of conversation about this a few years ago. I think it had just come out, right, Bob? When did you first publish it?
Oh, it's 7 years ago now.
Yeah, I think we did. We hashed it out over lunch, and I just told him how much I liked it, and I think the whole time travel thing worked really well. And I can't remember, there were some of the criticisms that I had, which were really just like little plot twists and things like that. Sorry, I haven't reread it recently, but I really loved that the AGM was in Honolulu, right? Because I live in San Diego now, but I did live in Hawaii for 13 and a half years. And I always thought, why can't we get everybody here? Well, it's hard enough just getting people to Victoria, British Columbia, because it's a challenge and it's expensive. So I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Unfortunately, probably not, but it's up to Cheryl. Maybe she can pull it off. Who knows?
Bob did say it was one of his goals, so at least he did it in a literary context. Bob, maybe you want to start off with how you came to use the time travel and marry that with a Jane Austen story.
Well, yeah, that's pretty easy, actually. I just copied other people. There's nothing particularly original about doing that, and some of you would know far more, but there have been at least a couple of other Jane Austen fan fiction pieces that have done something like that. So it just seemed like I wanted to give a new spin on it and write it from a male viewpoint. Although that's been done too. I guess there's very little that hasn't been done already, for that matter. But no, it was nothing particularly original. It was just a good way to have a vehicle to say the things in the story that I wanted to be able to say.
Those of us that know you know that your first reading of Jane Austen seems to dovetail with the characters. So I guess everybody will be wondering just how autobiographical it is.
That's, yeah. Everything that anyone writes is autobiographical to some degree, and that you put a lot of yourself into any novel. And those of you who are writers understand that very well. The part about the first reading of Jane Austen and Elizabeth and all that sort of stuff, that's very definitely autobiographical. I can remember, actually, I think I saw a high school play of Pride and Prejudice, and it was probably a terrible play, but it made an impression. And then I went and read the book, and that was it. It was over. I was hooked.
Paula.
Well, I happen to know that Gretchen, because I met with this group called the Newcomers Club, and Gretchen is a member of that, and she had them had Bob as part of the group. My phone's ringing, I'm sorry, to talk about this book. And one of the members told me that Bob said that he thought his protagonist was a chicken and he wanted the ending to be different. So I want to know why you said that and what different ending do you think it would be? That's a little bit of a cheat because I found out that you said
well, the problem with your question is that this happened more than 5 minutes ago. So it's somewhere beyond my attention span, at least at my age. But I thought, when you look back at it, I thought the protagonist, Jonathan, was in his own way kind of a pretty bad guy. I mean, Francis reacted, and look at all the girlfriends he had, and how he at the very end he just dumps Lara to go back after Jane. Not a nice guy at all. I'm not sure that I particularly wanted the ending to be different. I think what happened there was that my original outline and plot plan might have had a different ending. But sometimes when you write something, the ending sort of happens, and it doesn't happen in the way that you expect it to. And I think there was a certain amount of that here. I tell people the ending caught me by surprise, and they say, "Well, wait a minute, you wrote it," but that still can happen, believe me.
Francis, what you looks like you have a comment.
Oh, I was really happy that this isn't a self-insert character, so I can talk shit about him and not upset Bob. He only seemed to view women as potential people to have relationships with. He didn't seem to view them as three-dimensional people. Like Olivia, he could only see like two aspects of her. He couldn't see her as a whole person. And when Lara was just being, actually the Lara thing kind of bothered me, because that seemed to come out of nowhere. When she first turned up, I'm like, okay, so this is who he's going to end up with. But he then assumed that she was into him. And then she did behave like she was into him at the end, but that seemed kind of out of character for her. But yeah, he seemed to have an idea that women were only for having relationships with, but he also didn't really take them terribly seriously. And his love for Jane, well, who doesn't love Jane Austen, right? That's why we're here, because we love Jane Austen. But her love for him didn't make any sense for me. Maybe it's because it's a romantic thing. This foreign traveler has appeared and he's turning up in all these really important parts of my life. Therefore, it must be something special. But I'm not sure why she decided she was in love with him, especially so quickly too. What were other people's thoughts about that, or Bob's thoughts?
Well, if I can respond to that, I think you've hit on what I feel is by far the main weakness of the book, and that is that I felt, and I still feel, that her love for him was pretty unmotivated. And it other critics have said the same thing. They said that really stretches your stretches credibility, so to speak, and I have to agree with that. That is that and one other thing, which I'll get to maybe later on, is really that's really the major flaw of the book. So I think you've hit it right on the head. And if I had it to do over again, that would I'd spend a lot more time developing that and motivating that relationship. But I'm not going to do it over again.
Thank you, Bob. That was really gracious of you. I find it very hard when people criticize my writing, so thank you.
I was rooting for Laura, so I was a little disappointed that she was disappointed in the end. I was wondering if you, in your mind, have a vision of what happened to Laura.
I don't particularly, which is also another failing. But actually, one other critic hit on the same thing. That critic actually said that he thought Laura's attraction to Jonathan was not out of character, as someone here said, but just it just didn't make sense. It just didn't seem to add up. And what happened to her afterwards is a good question. And I think an even better question is, did Jonathan care? And this is where I get into him being kind of not the nicest guy by any means, kind of like me.
Other people, your reaction to the ending of the book?
Well, this isn't about the ending, but I did like some of the little touches in there. Like it was interesting to me how you chose certain key times to go back in Jane Austen's life, and that's such an interesting thing about time travel, because you can't program that in. You just show up and it's like, oh, it's this time now that we're meeting. And of course, his one outfit, it gets increasingly out of date. It was already out of date, I believe, at the beginning. And then he comes 10 years later and another 10 years later, or whatever the time frames were. And I just thought that was great. It's like, this guy never has a change of outfit. What must they think of him?
I thought that was very funny myself, that, he's so anxious to come back and there's no time between, the time he drinks a vial to when he goes again, that gets to be hardly any time even to dry clean his suit. So I thought that was very funny.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I like that part about the book a lot because all of us, we look at the annual general meeting and we look at costumes and we think, oh yeah, this is what Jane Austen wore. And then he shows up and like, oh my God, you're so out of date. And of course, I don't think we would be able to see it. So I like that a lot, that he thought he would be, in style and he wasn't. One thing about the ending, there was criticism about the Jane Austen project. I love some time travel and Jane Austen, and where they said they tied it up too much like a bow at the end. There was some criticism of that, and I didn't particularly agree with that. But then this ending definitely left me wanting more because we don't know what happened. He just disappeared, and so I like it from a reader's standpoint. I was okay with the ending. I liked it. It did wanting to find out what happened made me want to read more, but I still don't know what happened. So but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I just plowed through this book because I couldn't put it down.
Well, about that, about not wrapping up in everything in a bow. I've had this discussion with my, gosh, there's so many I have to think, second oldest son, the one who's an aspiring filmmaker. And we've talked a lot about how stories end and how movies end. And he is also of the opinion that you don't necessarily tidy everything up, that you leave some things to the imagination of the reader or the viewer and let them think about how things might have happened rather than making it all sort of rigid enough that there's no room for speculation. At one point, I thought I might write a sequel, and I kind of left the door open for that, but that won't happen either. I think that's, the time has moved on.
Speaking of moving on, so sorry I have to leave. It was nice just to be here just for a little bit. So aloha, and I'll be in town in December for the marathon. So I hope to see you then.
Okay, thanks, Jean.
Very well.
Bye, everybody.
We'll plan something. Bye, Jean. See you in Victoria.
Absolutely.
Okay, am I the only person that was a little confused at the ending? Because the very practical side of me said, wait, he's gathering her up. The implication is he's going to take her away, but then how did they have a body to bury? So if that was the case.
Well, I kind of liked that it could have been either way, right? That Cassandra has either built this all up in her head somehow, or that both are true. So history wasn't changed, but also Jane Austen came to the past. And I think one of the great things about ending a book with not everything tied up is it actually stays in your head longer. It has a bigger impact on the reader than if everything's tied up, because there aren't any unanswered questions if everything's tied up tightly. And I think that was a great way to do it. So you're like, wait, was this like it was all a dream thing, or did it actually happen? One thing that I struggled a little bit with, though, was that everyone was first person, all the writing was first person perspective. So you had to try and figure out who was talking. And we hadn't had Cassandra before. So then when it was Cassandra, it took a bit for your brain to go, oh, that's who's talking right now. And that threw me a little bit.
I'm glad to hear that, because it was supposed to. And actually, I've had various opinions about putting Cassandra in the last chapter. One of my beta readers said, "This is awful. You just can't do this. What are you doing bringing in another first person perspective at the very end?" So, I'll say that I took a bit of a risk in doing that, but I think I'm glad I did, because it gave the ending this uncertainty that you spoke of. And it was kind of what I was looking for. Was this real or wasn't it real? Was it all in Jonathan's head? Was it all in Cassandra's head? Just what was it? And, so someone asked me that point blank, what was it? It was one of my sons. And I said, I don't know. And he said, how can you not know? You wrote the book. Well, but the fact is, I wanted it to be open-ended, and I'm kind of glad it worked out that way.
I did enjoy the relationship of the sisters, because you always hear, oh, the two sisters, loving sisters, so close and all. And, it's just, I don't have a sister, I have a brother, but in real life, you just don't always get along. So I did like the dynamics of the sisters that, there were maybe some jealousies, there were some suspicions, there was some protectiveness, there was, they didn't always get along hunky-dory. So I thought that was a good aspect of the book.
Well, two things about that. One is that no two siblings ever get along 100%. I defy anyone to show a real life case where that's true. But the other is that they're portrayed as being so close and everything being so wonderful, but there is at least a certain amount of scholarship that questions that. Now, granted, I took another risk in carrying that. Perhaps a little further than even the scholarship would warrant, but it was for the purposes of a story, and it wasn't supposed to be, as I said in the introduction, it wasn't supposed to be just another biography of Jane. We don't need another one of those. Francis asked if I can point to that scholarship. I don't have that reference handy, but that's something I'd have to go and look for again.
Thank you, because that's really fascinating, because I've never come across that, and I'd love to read that. Because yeah, we have this very cookie cutter, the sisters are best friends and they rely on each other, and it was hard to read about them not being, like, there was a lot of animosity between them and a lot of distrust, and it was hard to see them actually being close and have it feel like Jane had anyone on her side for the whole book, which then actually makes you go, yeah, I can see why she's reaching out to Jonathan, because he would do anything for her, but she doesn't have anyone else on her side, it felt like.
True. And that was, like I say, it's an open question as to whether I carried it too far. But in building up the isolation and in building up some of the tension, that was a plot device, and so I went ahead with it. And I just basically asked forgiveness rather than permission.
Did you do any research on mental health? The idea of someone's suffering, so you'd send them away somewhere. Did you look into the practices of the time when you were writing the book?
Not in great detail, but just enough to know that it was incredibly easy to send someone off in those days. It wouldn't take a whole lot. Some authority figure like a parent could go to a doctor and it'd be done in minutes. It would be very, very easy.
I suspect, especially when it is a woman in question.
Oh, unfortunately, that's true.
How long did you work on the book? When do you recall from the initial idea through the writing? And can you tell us a little bit about the process of publishing?
Sure. I would say a little over 2 years. I think I wrote the first draft about 2 years before I went to publication. That's either fairly fast or fairly slow, depending on how you look at that. But I mean, the whole process. So you write a draft, you write your first draft, and I think I did it during one of those National Novel Writing Month things where I basically wrote the whole draft in 30 days, which was incredibly tiresome, and you end up with an incredibly bad draft. And then I rewrote it and cut out some scenes that I really liked, but that just didn't fit the plot. And then sent it out to beta readers and got feedback, and then finally did a third draft. And then there's a point at which you just say, I'm done with this, and you go ahead and publish it. And I got to that point about 2 years into the process where I knew if of course, it was my first novel. I was much less experienced, but I knew at that point that if I would tweak it a lot more, I would just go backwards. So that was the time to release it, basically. And of course, I self-publish, and it's sold. I'm sure it's sold 5 or 6 copies by now. So, we're not doing bad.
Well, I have to say, I thought it was well written, Bob. I mean, of course, I enjoyed the story, but I have to, I think I've been called by some people as being hypercritical. I don't think I am. I just think I enjoy good writing. And I thought it was well written. I really did. I enjoyed it, not just because it was Jane Austen and time travel, but I appreciated that. I think Gretchen was the one who suggested this, and that it was a joy to read. So thank you very much.
Well, that's very kind and generous, Donna.
Oh, same. I've been wanting to say that from the beginning. It's like, I approach each Jane Austen book like from nothing. I don't like judge it by anything, including Jane Austen's own novels. And then, for your first book, you just said it was your first book. It's like, wow, this is really good. The writing was good. I mean, I read it through. I didn't have any. I'm very critical about writing styles and stuff like that. And I thought it was very good. And I didn't mind that you changed the first person narrative at all, because that's really modern. I mean, that's really now. People do it all the time now, but it wasn't done so much in the olden days. And that the fact that you left the ending open was a plus for me, for sure. So I agree with all the good things. It's like, I think it was a very good book, Bob, really.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. As far as the quality of the writings, one other person said, she said, Bob has a simple, straightforward writing style. And I'm not sure if that was a compliment or the opposite. I'm not really sure what to do with that. But I don't write very dense, literary school type prose for the most part. But I'm glad you liked it. And there are so many weaknesses, but I'm glad you liked the story and the writing.
The descriptions were very good. I enjoyed that, and particularly living in Hawaii and picturing things as you described different settings. And I want to go down to Chinatown and look and see if I can find the back alley that's the one in your novel.
I can show you where it is.
I wondered if you based it on an actual alley.
I did, in fact.
It sounds like a school trip. You can take us to the sites in your novel. I'm all for that.
I'd have to remember where it was, but yeah, there was an alley, and there was not a store at the back of it. I think it led to a parking lot or something, but there was the door, the grating type door on the front, and that was all for real.
The time travel, it's a Chinese lady that does it, and I wondered whether you'd looked into whether that was something that was part of like Chinese medicine mythology sort of thing, and whether you were influenced by, like, I understand that Hawaii has quite a large Asian population.
Yeah, and that's actually the reason that I chose a Chinese lady, because of the large Asian population, and because I was so intrigued by this alley in Chinatown. Seriously, as silly as that sounds, but I didn't look into medicine or mythology for this. It was just it just seemed like a convenient plot device, and I kept it. I kept it more in the magical line, rather than like some hard science sci-fi where you try to describe how you would rotate a vector in space to get to get to time travel and all and all this Clifford algebra kind of stuff. I just wanted it to be something that was sort of, you don't know quite how it works, you don't even quite know if it's real, but it was just like that.
Well, the sort of mystic quality of it ties well into the idea of was this a dream on one of the characters' part. So it fit.
Oh, by the way, the name I chose for the magical woman, Madame Weilin, that's actually there's a woman named Weilin who I know very well here in Honolulu. And she was a little surprised to turn up in the book, and thankfully she didn't mind.
What was the core thing that started off this novel for you, like the core idea? Was it you went to the alley and then you went, oh, I can see it all from here, or was it something else?
I don't know that it's any one thing. I think some of it started with the idea of having an AGM in Honolulu. That was perhaps, and I should comment further on that, but that was perhaps the one thing. And then you know, the whole thing that every true Janeite has this thing about meeting Jane, you know, and of course if you're a guy it takes on another dimension, and you know, it just sort of built up from there. About the AGM in Honolulu, though, one criticism I got about the book, which was fair criticism, is that I made the attendees at the AGM, particularly Claire, seem kind of cheap. And of course, if you've been to an AGM, you'll know that the people at the AGM are just amazing, and they're anything, you know, they're anything but that. But this was written before I had actually been to one, and I've said this about AGMs, and I think some of you can relate to it, that the AGM is a place where not many guys go, but the guys that do go there are interested in women because of their intellect and nothing else, and that's pretty rare.
I will say I was thinking when we attended the Jane Austen Society meeting in England, it's one afternoon. There's some business reports, one speaker, you know, people are there dressed for a tea on the lawn. But, you know, I think what do these British people think of us? They must think we're just crazy that, you know, we're running around in costume and you know, that we have this several day event and we're ballroom dancing and doing all this stuff. So I was sort of chuckling to myself about what these people must think of us. So it'll be my first AGM, so it'll be interesting. I'll be curious to see how that goes and if we have any international visitors.
Well, you know, some of the academic community doesn't particularly like Jasna. They think it's not serious. And yet there's a very serious participation by academics in Jasna. So there's really two sides to that. Jazz, I think, is more, the English Society, I think, is maybe a little more of an academic nature and less of a historical reenactment, if you will. But I see no reason why you can't have fun and have serious academic interests at the same time.
Speaking from an outside perspective, I think every society has its unique personality, and like the New Zealand Society, which I run, is, you know, very all-inclusive. You can be academic or not. And I had gone to meetings with the Australian Society, and they felt very, they leaned more towards the academic. They wanted to sit there and listen to people give talks, right? And I was more interested in, yes, we hear someone talk, but then fostering the discussion afterwards and hearing everybody's thoughts about what had been said and everyone's perspectives. And I think that will vary from society to society, and probably actually even branch to branch. I understand that in Australia there's a schism, and one of the states has their own separate society from the rest of the Australian society. I don't know the drama behind it, but yeah.
I think there are 3 or 4 Australian societies. I turned up that many of them when I was researching possible speakers for that Pan-Pacific conference a year ago. But I think you'll, Cheryl, you'll appreciate the Jasna way of doing things at the AGM when you go to the Regency Ball. The Regency Ball, there's just nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. It's just amazing. And I hope you've practiced so you can dance.
Well, I'm signed up for the workshop, so I can learn a little bit. But no, I am looking forward to playing as well as learning.
Cheryl, can I ask you, so when you're talking about going to the Jane Austen Society thing in England, was that part of the tour or is that a separate trip?
Well, in England, that's a tour that Jasna puts together. And sponsors. So it's well,
So it was part of this
annual
last
thing.
trip,
This is the one that was postponed 2 years because of COVID.
right? So
um,
this was part of the last trip that you went on. It
So that
wasn't a separate,
So
like
that
you
was,
didn't go at a different time. Okay.
yeah, so that was the trip I went on, right?
Yeah.
And it just
Oh.
happened that Gretchen was in just after us, and also Margaret, who couldn't join us today, but she was in England on with family and some touring. So we met her for lunch, and she was visiting some of the same sites, but unfortunately couldn't join in, tag along with us, since she wasn't signed up for the tour. So that one of the plus sides, I guess, of COVID was the original tour was scheduled after Sanditon had come out, and it was very Sanditon oriented. So after it got delayed because of COVID,
Lord.
it sort of reworked the itinerary, which for me was preferable. So to more traditional one. One stop I'll mention was Winchester Cathedral. You visit the Jane Austen's grave, and the dean of, I think it's the dean, I may have the title wrong, but comes out and does a little prayer and a talk, and everybody gets a carnation, and you lay the carnation on the grave.
Wow.
And everybody's taking picture. And my roommate, who's from Iowa, she kind of leaned over to me and she said, "It seems a little cultish to me," which, so again, it's the kind of thing, if you enjoy it, you get something out of it. If not, you can just smile and move on, or go do your tour of the cathedral.
It's something that not everybody relates to, and you can call it cultish or anything you want, but we sure have a good time. If I can pick on can I pick on a couple of people, Cheryl? Is that okay?
Yep, pick away. We're picking on you.
Haven't heard anything from the folks that are from outside our region, like Joy is back, and Lyndon and Kirk and Marion. I was hoping to hear something from a non-Hawaii perspective.
Okay, I'll speak. Aloha. I'm from Sacramento, and I joined the meeting because I read Bob's other book, the other one about the orphan.
Oh, Hanai.
Yeah, because I'm always so hungry for Mansfield Park fan fiction, which there's not that much of.
Yeah.
Not much of that. So I always gravitate towards fan fiction that's other than Pride and Prejudice. And I'm sorry, I haven't read the book, but I have it. I bought it from you back in 2017, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. But I will recommend it to our reading group. We have 2 reading groups here in Sacramento, and so I'll recommend it so that I can have a chance to read it. I just wanted to say about the AGMs. I've been going since 1992 and have only missed 3. And they're always fun. They're always a balance of academic and cult. And so I would highly recommend all of you to try at least once. And so welcome, Cheryl. I'll look for you in Victoria.
Great. I loved Hanai. I read Hanai as well. Hanai, for those of you that don't know, is a Hawaiian. It's not usually illegal, but it's an adoption. You become part of the family. That's not necessarily a blood family. So it's been a while since I read that, but I remember enjoying it very much.
And thank you for reading that, Joy. I think you're one of, I think that makes 4 readers now, so we're really moving up.
Kirk, you always have good comments.
I read the Mansfield one too. I must say I didn't quite like it as much as I like this one. A little too grim for me, I'm afraid. But I enjoyed it. I read it last year, so I am straining a bit to remember, I'm sorry to say. Yeah, I don't recall any criticisms. I prefer the bow on the end, the happy ending and so forth, but it was fine. And the Austen story does have a little bittersweet in it there, so I can understand that. And while we're talking about AGMs, it reminds me that Joanna Trollope said about American Janeites, they all dress up and they all are not exactly healthy. so a different perspective, and shows a British mean girl at her worst. I've called her Caroline Bingley in print a couple times. And
Wow.
her Austen book was lousy. It was Austen Mad Libs, in my opinion. If Austen said barouche, she said Jaguar.
Kirk, we talked about it before, the bow thing at the end, wrapping it up at the end. One of my critics, someone whose opinion I really respect, but in this case, what she said to me was, she said it in these words. She said, no, you don't get to do that. meaning writing a romance that doesn't have a very tidy, happy ending.
and maybe in my head I made the ending happy as time has gone by. So you didn't need to write the sequel. I already put them together.
Good.
Well, that's true, and it's sort of up to you. You can put your own happy ending on it. Carolyn or Roseanne, we haven't heard from you, or Lynn?
I also had something that hit me. I think that it would make a very good television or movie even. It really seemed to lend itself to something like that. And so I was wondering if you had ever been approached for anything like that. I've read some of the other Jane Austen time travel ones and was familiar with this, but as I say, it seemed like this worked very well as something that could be adapted to a television or movie venue.
I mean, that'd be nice, but the offers have not exactly been pouring in, but that would be interesting. Someone said it would make a good movie. And we could, they could actually go to that alley in Chinatown and film there or something, but who knows? Anything's possible, but things may be possible, but not exactly likely.
Gotta get that son of yours to work.
Yeah, there you go.
We have questions for Bob or comments about the book?
I was going to say Kumukula Theater. I forget the exact name, but it's a theater in Honolulu that does Hawaiian themed plays. And they're doing, I think in December, a Hawaiian version of Pride and Prejudice.
Oh.
Maybe that would be the way to start, to have Courting Jane be like a play at the Kumukulu Theater and start there, and then maybe we could move it into the movie genre.
Just a correction, sorry, Gretchen. It's not Kumukahua, but it's that one Cheryl mentioned in a different email. There's I forget the group. It's called Kailua. It used to be called Kailua on Stage, but they call themselves now Koa Theater. They moved to Kaka'ako, and they're doing a version of Pride and Prejudice there in December. So Kumukahua, I actually know, I know their lineup, so I know that's not theirs.
That's interesting. A few years ago, I had started a Hawaiianized version of Pride and Prejudice, and it got through a second draft and is still waiting for the third draft. And I was actually thinking of getting back to that in the next month or so. I've had some big publishing projects that are now almost out of the way. So Donna gave me a very good critique on that book a couple of years ago now, and I still haven't finished it, but maybe that's got some possibilities. Who knows?
I'm not sure if this is a Hawaiianized.
A lot of us read it, I think.
Pardon me?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you sent it out to a bunch of us, and I think a bunch of us read it because I remember reading it.
Yeah,
and I like it a lot, and I've been waiting for it to come out.
Oh, it will. Like I said, I've had about 2 years of wall-to-wall major publication projects, and they're about to close in November, so I may actually get back to it sooner than later. And I do appreciate all of your comments.
Regarding the play, I'm not sure if it's a Hawaiian version, but it is a contemporary version. And I've been in touch with the manager, coordinator, whatever, the person at Koa Theater, who said that they will offer us group tickets. So I will be following up, and we can do it as a group outing. He did warn people that it's somewhat irreverent. So so people should be prepared for not a faithful necessarily Jane Austen rendition of Pride and Prejudice, but it does sound like fun. So
Yes, it does.
I will be out with more information on that as I get in touch with him. And
Francis, time for another trip to Hawaii.
Well, I mean, if you're offering to put me up,
anytime.
I'll come. Or should I wait till Bob's one's on stage?
Yeah.
That may or may not happen in my lifetime. So I would say come sooner than later.
Come twice.
Every year I'll just come see you guys. It'd be great.
We'd love it. And the
I'd
rest
love
of you too. If you have plans for Hawaii, we'd love to have you check in. We don't do things every month, but we would love to get together. Gretchen's a great tour guide and hostess.
And Cheryl, you've done such an outstanding job as RC. I'm so delighted with you've really taken things into a new dimension. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I don't know about that. We definitely want to encourage membership. So that'll be the next project, I think.
Well, we're near the end of our hour here. Have we heard from everyone? Have we heard from Lyndon? I don't know. I hate to pick on you, but actually I don't hate to.
I have a couple of questions actually for other people. How many people have gone to AGMs of the Jazz Now? I've never gone to one. Okay. So from Joy's comment, it sounds like it's a really enjoyable thing to do. Would you say that too, Bob? Yep. Okay, 2 thumbs. As to the book, I want to say, I thought it was a real page turner. I had a hard time putting it down also. In fact, I stayed up late reading it a couple of times and I caught myself falling asleep, or it hit me on my head or something. But it was really enjoyable. I like the different plot twists and how unexpected things happened, like when he dropped the last file and it crashed on the floor, and then he did exactly what I would have thought of doing, which is going to go down and lap it up, trying to lick it up. So there were some plot turns, and I think overall, like with the funny things about his clothing being so outdated and the dropping the vial and trying to lick it up from the floor, I found it very humorous. So there was a lightness and a lightheartedness about it also, despite Jonathan being such a serious, intense person. Meeting Jane and making something out of his meeting. Not just meeting her would be wonderful, but meeting her and having a relationship with her. So it was a real kind of nice counterbalance that way. I really very much enjoyed it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Paula.
Bob, the thing about them kissing was a little bit out of character. I don't know if you saw, editorial comment, that dreadful new Persuasion, where she's basically making out with.
Oh, that was horrible.
Just, and she's drunk now. Oh my God, she's a drunk. But how did you feel about putting in some physicality when the rest of our things that we read, there's just no signs of affection?
I won't say I did that deliberately as a shocker, but I did it deliberately because I knew it was out of place, because I wanted to have that jarring note that wow, this is really different. This is not just another, well, what do you expect? They let the end of their fingernail touch or something, so I actually wanted that dimension. And of course, I mean, if you want to be honest, part of it's wishful thinking.
You know, when the person at the Kakaako Theater said, "Oh, we're warning you that it's irreverent." What Jane Austen is irreverent.
Oh,
I mean, she's
absolutely.
nothing but. So it actually is in kind of keeping because she was kind of a rebel for her days. I mean, for her time. So
Francis just asked me a question in the chat, but I won't. You can repeat it out loud if you wish, but I won't go any further than that.